Bing. It's been a while since I've
Morning.
been.
Or
Morning.
it has been a while since you've done your patented imitation of our music.
Signature.
I said good morning, good afternoon for you.
Good afternoon for me. Good morning for you. And if you're in Australia right now, go home. You're hammered. Just
If
call it
you're
a
in
night,
Australia
bro.
right now, why are
May.
you listening to this?
May.
How are you doing, dude?
I'm doing good. Yeah. I had a weird. It was an up and down weekend that we had here. We'll get into some of the specifics, but there were a lot of ups. One of them, I had an improv show, my first improv show here in London.
Let me
With
give you an idea, okay? A
yes.
dog who's afraid of his tail. Go.
Okay, sorry. Could you just say dildo? That's the one we usually get. I have a lot of material planned for that.
A dog who's afraid of his dildo.
Yeah. Well,
This is
I'm
that's a
gonna
loaded
have to
story.
edit that scene because we're getting into some territory where they will call the police about.
Do you wait? I noticed our running order. Do you want to do football first, or do you want to do Vitkins first?
Vitkins?
All right. Do you want to? All right.
What's
It's like
Vitkins?
a.
Oh,
It
this
looks
thing.
like yeah. Is this okay?
Oh,
This is great
yes.
listening.
Yes. You can put that one first. We're gonna talk. Well, no, we'll do this one first because I'll tell you why.
Okay.
So,
All right.
as you may know, if you are not an Australian who's been inebriated for the last 24 to 48 hours,
Which I am.
that was a great Australian accent. Continue.
No, that's all I can say.
Here's a good starter for you for your Australian accents. Quick aside. The words rise, up, and lights. If you say those words, you are now
It's razor
speaking.
blades.
Yeah, fair enough. So rise up lights, and then I feel like once you get a few words going, then suddenly you're speaking Australians.
Something like Liam Ainsworth, which
Mate,
might be British. Yeah.
come on, smoke, you jackaroo.
It's really tough because my boss is Australian and one of our biggest clients is Australian, and I still can't do a good voice. That doesn't stop me from trying. Yeah, of course.
Wow.
I want them to feel welcomed.
You don't get intimidated in front of this gigantic client? How big is he?
I mean, he's millions of dollars.
Oh, he's dollars big. I was expecting like a 6'9", 340-pound.
Noise.
Noise. You know what word I wish I could say like an Australian? I'll never be able to do it in my life. But the way that they can say any word that's like S-O or N-O and it'll have 6 syllables and we're like, no.
So there's on Comedy Bang Bang, whenever anybody plays an Australian, normally someone goes, I know.
I know. That's funny.
This whole podcast is uniting the world against us, pretty much. When they listen to this, it's like who haven't they made fun of with their shitty impressions?
Yeah, that's true. Maybe we're a plot from the UN to band the world together with all of the accents essentially being Russian accents. So we're banding the world against Russia.
The world was the real United the whole time on this podcast.
Wow. And Arsenal was the real nation. United Nations.
All right. So
anyway,
tell Jeff, this is your show.
As you can tell,
yeah.
I've been speaking about Manchester City and some allegations that have been made against them for approximately 5 minutes now.
Okay.
That isn't true, but as I was saying, if you're not an inebriated Australian who hasn't been paying attention to the back page of the newspaper, then you would know that Manchester City has been accused, brought up on charges by the Premier League. And interestingly, these are essentially the same charges that they had before, except with more information, less loopholes, and it looks kind of dire for them on the surface. Although if you're like me at all, then you're having trouble believing that something bad will ever happen to the people who have lots of money and keep winning the league. But it's hard to think of a logical reason for how they're going to get out of this one. I don't know. Thoughts?
Jeff, will you please state to me that Manchester City are in financial trouble? Just
Well,
state it. Just say it. Say the words.
Manchester City are accused of financial doping. They're accused of a bunch of fake companies, setting up a bunch of fake companies. They are in. Wait, did you really just want that particular phrase? Manchester City are in financial trouble.
I know.
Oh no!
All right, listen, Jeff, I've already lived through the Mueller report once. Do I need to live through it again? Do I need to live
God,
through it another
that is too good of a comparison.
it's gonna be like this, like 800 pages of, you know, was it red to rights? Dead to rights. Red Dead Redemption.
Red Dead
800,
Redemption.
800 pages of Red Dead Redemption 2, where we're gonna find out about all these things that they did, but then FIFA, UEFA, and the Premier League, I just feel like are going to be like, but money is going to be the reason why they don't get in trouble. The same reason why Donald Trump isn't in jail right now is it's like greed protects and insulates these like too big to fails from failing. And that's why I feel very jaded about if anything's going to come from it.
I mean, I would be surprised too, and I feel like the smart money is on not much coming from it. But there is a little part of me that thinks, hey, these guys are in really serious trouble. And why would the Premier League even bother to bring this up? These are essentially the same allegations that they were accused of in, it was between the period of like 2014 to 2018.
Yeah.
But
They said it goes back 14 years. Like it goes back to them arriving in the league, right?
Yeah. And I mean, and I allude to this with, if you're watching the podcast rather than reading it, we have a little scrolling banner that says Manchester City bad at fraud and football. We'll get to the football part in a minute, but like the funny thing about this to me is like, I've read a lot of articles basically saying the reason why financial fair play won't work is because everything is so subjective what the value of things are in football. So like if you just have a credible company that decides I'd like to sponsor your training facility for 500 million. I'd like to buy the naming rights to Mikel Arteta's car for 300 million, then you really, what are you going to say that they are not worth that? Like maybe they are, maybe they're not. I don't know. But they've done it in such a sloppy way where there's like shell companies set up with no employees and they're just like a PO box in London somewhere that, they seem, like you said, kind of dead to rights on this. And so I just wonder why the Premier League would even bother bringing it up if they weren't planning to really sort of draw a line in the sand. And then when you look at the prospect of Liverpool, United, and Newcastle already has been bought by, like, all of these teams could be owned by giant state-backed organizations soon. I don't know enough about the Chelsea situation to say that they're doing things wrong necessarily, but it does seem like there's going to be a problem there with a lot of money being injected into the league. So this could be sort of the last chance hotel for the league to draw a line on financial doping and say, like, this is what's allowed and this is what isn't. And like, we're going to make an example out of Manchester City.
Is it crazy though that like I'm too jaded to believe that. Like, I mean, you're totally right. This does feel like a make or break moment for the league when it comes to the financial influence of, states.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why it's so hard to stop them is like some of these states that own clubs that like they're ruthless in even the way that they govern their nations, and that's money is like money that could actually be going to help their people. Like they don't care, like they'll kill anyone, run over anyone to get what they want. And I feel like the people that make the decision on whether to punish them or not are people, and those people have families. Like I feel like this could be some mafia level shit, Jeff.
It would be a little surprising if it wasn't, or at least sort of Saul Goodman-ish stuff. Or like, it's sort of the opposite of Saul Goodman. It's the firm that Saul Goodman's brother works at, if you watch the show, where it's like the actual white shoe law firm that has just a lot of connections and a lot of power. And oh yeah, they're pretty smart and they'll find any little crack in any case if there is one to be found legitimately. So yeah, it does feel like it would be a very uphill battle, but also it's interesting because so much of the information that is out here because of the previous case that UEFA brought against them, where they had sort of temporarily been given this
Statute of
2-year
limitations.
ban.
Yeah.
Right. And then they got out of it for statute of limitations, but it's like, well, that information didn't stop existing.
Good point.
Now it's public information. And then on top of that, there was the football leaks thing, which goes back quite a ways. Do you remember that? Where there
I
was
don't
a
remember it
hacker.
by that name.
It might have had a better name. Football Gate. I don't know. That just sounds like
It's always a
any
gate.
Yeah, there's always a gate. I think there's a lot more evidence than there was before. I don't know. I would love to see them do something about it.
What are we talking about for prospective punishments? I mean, it's been hinted at in our text thread, but let's verbalize that.
Right.
Wasn't it?
There's been a lot.
People are calling for relegation.
Yeah. And then there's that weird, not that many people know sort of the inner workings of this, or you never hear it discussed, but like the Premier League is a completely separate entity to the Football League. It didn't used to be that way, right? It used to be the first division was a part of the Football League, and then all the big teams broke away. And so there's an interesting case I read about where the Premier League could expel them. And then typically when the Premier League expels you, you would just go down to the championship or the next level down, or the Football League would say, fine, you have to start in, League One or whatever it is, kind of similar to the way that Juventus years back had to start a few leagues down.
Series C.
But something like that, yeah. I think it was Series C, right? But in this case, there isn't any. If they're kicked out of the Premier League, there's a decent chance that the Football League wouldn't want to have them. So they would actually have to go all the way down to the National League, and they'd be playing against like Wrexham Season 1.
One that will never happen. I'm positive that the worst thing that could possibly happen to them would be championship, and then they'd be back up in 12 months.
That would be interesting. I mean, the other interesting thing with that is if they go to the championship, there's going to be players that abandon them. And the championship is kind of a good league. And there's a little part of me that's like, is there any chance that with the turmoil, what if Pep doesn't hang out? What if, that they might actually languish in the championship for a year or two? I think probably not. But I don't know. I want to like at least consider some of the possible miseries of this team.
No, please bathe in it. But I feel like City's academy could get up in the championship. Like there's just so much talent in that organization, and I hate the fact that there is. I do.
True.
But I
also think that their B team could possibly get Champions League football. Like they might like beat out Spurs. You know what I mean? So it's that.
I mean, we could talk about them beating out Spurs.
Yeah. Speaking of how easy it is for Man City to beat Spurs, man, that really turned around my weekend. And I know we're sort of talking about everything in reverse order here, but we'll get back to it. But Arsenal lost to Everton. They, were in the relegation zone. I believe they were last place at the time. And it just felt like the kind of game where I saw it coming a million miles away of like, we have a much bigger game on the horizon that has been hyped and postponed all season against Man City. And we are coming off having just played Man City in a cup game. And now we're playing a last place team that's got the new manager bump. It's an away game. It just had every part of the recipe for us to screw it up. And we did. Fair play to Everton. They played very well in that game, and I'm worried that they have actually exposed some tactical ways that every other team is going to try to beat us now.
Wait, have we jumped to?
No, I don't. I went way too long on the Arsenal part of that because that was just the preamble to saying that. Then the next day, Manchester City made my weekend by losing to Spurs, which is I texted Schuyler, come on you Spurs, which is not something I often say.
I'm Schuyler, by the way. I could. You're talking to me.
Speaking to the listener, my friend. No. And yeah, in the end, it ended up being almost better that they did that because it sort of gave me a weird amount of joy to see them lose.
It was a Harry Kane goal. I didn't get to watch the match, the City Spurs match, but it sounded brutal. It sounded like everything I would have wanted from a City Spurs match.
Yeah, it did not look fun. Um, but yeah, so we alluded to it too quickly. Let's go back to talking just a little bit about the principal's office visit that Manchester City have going on here. One of the big things that has also been discussed, in addition to relegation, is having to vacate previous titles. And I think, I've seen that happen many times in American sports, and I think it's the strangest punishment because it's like, well, what are you going to do? Take back the joy that someone felt 8 years ago or something like that?
It happened.
Yeah, exactly. But and then I think more interestingly, because I believe this would affect United directly, if they were to vacate and then the number 2 team in various years that they had to vacate got the title, that would mean that you guys would suddenly have like the 2017, 2018, I believe, Premier League trophy. Would you take any
It
joy in
was
that whatsoever?
someone had it was a Liverpool supporting friend, so of course this was self-serving for him. But like I think six of City's leagues, three of them would go to United and three of them would go to Liverpool, and like,
Oh wow.
but like looking at that, I like one. It just doesn't feel right. Like we've sucked for a decade, and I own that. And we're only just earning our way back into respectability, much less contention. Uh, and it would feel like a mirage. It would feel fake. It would feel like it would actually feel unearned because in that league, even though there was unfair financial forces at play, there was a better team that existed that was compiled and they
Right.
played really good football and won the league. And it's very frustrating and I hate it. But this is as much of a part of United's history at this point as the leagues that we've won is like the years that have been the lost years.
Yeah.
And to just hand us three titles would feel disingenuous. Is that the right word to say?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like
It'd be like someone else saying, "All right, I'm giving you my birthday. Now it's your birthday." You're like, "But it isn't."
but there's a cake.
There is no cake at Carrington. I can promise you that right now.
Do you think there's any chance that the league sort of sacks up and makes every Manchester City from years ago get on a double decker bus, drive in reverse around Manchester and cry?
They have to drive on the right side of the road from now on.
Yes, every part of it has to be backwards. Their shirt has to be backwards and inside out. They have to talk backwards like the guys in David Lynch's lodge in like Twin Peaks.
I don't think Kun Aguero could do that. I feel like it's unfair to ask that of a lowly athlete.
Ooh, do you think that Kun Aguero made a deal with the devil about this? And he said, "I would give back all 6 of the titles that Manchester City recently won if I could only have the World Cup." Do you think that that has anything to do with it?
Well, the hard part is he got to go to the World Cup, but he didn't win the World Cup. So already the devil's like, monkey paw, you said you wanted the World Cup. You didn't say that you wanted to play.
I do love that about him that he like took joy in it and he wasn't like at all pissed the way I think a lot of players would be to like work your entire life and almost get that.
It's like going to someone else's wedding and then like screaming with joy when they kiss the bride and then you reacting a little too much for someone
Yeah.
else's joy.
Just making like orgasm noises.
At a wedding?
Mhm.
You're not supposed to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not forever holding this piece, my friends. I am letting it out.
That is funny to think about, like stupid bullshit, like embarrassing punishments you could give them. My concern is it's going to be we have given you the biggest fine in world football history, and it's 10 million euros, and they're going to go, okay, we've got that in our pockets. I think, guys, you got your pocket. Yeah, we got 10 million here. Like,
Yeah.
I'm afraid it's going to be a slap on the wrist that money just like disappears.
Yeah.
Like that it feels like almost like a way that they could do bribery in broad daylight to get out of trouble. It's just pay a fee.
It brings up the larger question of what, if any, punishment would actually fit this crime. Like in what possible way could you somehow make this right? Because you can't go back and undo the amount of joy that was faced. Like I think the one thing that they could do this season, self-serving Arsenal fan checking in, take away points that are happening now, because then, if somehow they took away 5 points and Arsenal ends up winning the league by 1, or they end up losing the league by 1, that is actually a loss. You know what I mean? Like on some level, there have been other seasons where teams have been docked points for various things.
I mean, Derby last year was docked what, like 20-something, 30-something points for being poor. That's what's funny. If you're poor, they really fuck you.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting benchmark, because if that's how much you get for being poor, then how much do you get for being illegally rich? It ought to be similar, said the Arsenal
when you're
fan.
illegally rich, you're ruining the league and hurting other teams. There's more, you could say, like, of a legal argument for damages. Whereas if you suck because you're poor, you're just handing out free points, or you're handing out free place, like league table place increases. I don't know, dude. Sometimes these sentences don't sound right coming out of my mouth.
No, they don't. That one sounded right.
I should do a podcast.
Talk for a living, my friend. Yeah. I mean, I think that the vacated titles would be interesting, because like the one area where I could see it coming up, and it wouldn't come up in this case, but like, let's say that somehow they went back in time and Arsenal were like I don't know, if Leicester City had to like vacate that title or something. I'm just trying to think the last time we came in second. Then it would add to the sort of tally of all-time trophies. And there's a point probably down the road a bit, like 20 or 30 years, where it's like, nobody really is discussing individual FA Cups that we won in like the 60s or something, but that number kind of matters. You know what I mean? Of like, we've won the league this many times, or we've won the FA Cup that many times. That's the only time I could see even taking the smallest amount of joy out of winning the league because someone else vacated the title. But even then, I feel like the City fans would just count it their way. Like, yeah, we won the league then.
So I just understood what you're saying. You guys finished second during the Leicester year, but that wouldn't be impacted by this. So it's and you finished third.
Me also
behind
great
City's,
talking. Yeah.
You finished third behind City in 2014. Who won the league in 2014? Chelsea?
Is that right? That sounds right.
It's not letting me do it.
That would have been too early for Liverpool to be good. Yeah, it must have been Chelsea. It wasn't you guys, because you guys last won it in 2012.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is no year that you finished second to City when they were winning the league, because I'm going all the way back now to like before City had been taken over, and I'm not. Yeah, it was a lot of Chelsea. It was all Mourinho bullshit.
There's no that would be peak irony if Chelsea somehow ended up with a title. We need to do the right thing about financial fair play and hand the title to Chelsea.
That illustrates kind of a point, though, that I bet you that this isn't the last time we'll have a conversation like this. Even if they throw the book at City, someone else is going to be like, but I'll be smarter.
Yeah, I do think that's like the biggest. I mean, I alluded to it at the top. Is like they did it in such a dumb way. And I think on some level, they must have just been banking on FFP because it was new then. Like that it was always just going to be this sort of toothless thing. And so far, they've been kind of right, but
almost like brazenly. Like they're pretty bold to be like, we don't think you're going to fucking do anything. And like that's the way because otherwise, to your point, they would have gone through greater effort to hide their cheating, to hide their financial doping. And Newcastle right now, also like recently purchased by a state, has kind of not gone as Chelsea as we thought that they might be going. You know, like how Chelsea has spent all that they've spent. I kind of was under the impression Newcastle would try and do that, but they haven't, which makes me think they're actually trying to like safeguard themselves in the future. But this makes me ask, all right, so if City has been financially doping, what the fuck is Chelsea doing this year? Like, how is it any different? A guy comes in and says, I'm going to spend 2/3 of £1 billion, pounds, in one fucking season.
On a
Like,
club
how is
that
it
if
any
they're
different?
anything like any of the other clubs right now have probably lost 100 million for the last several years running. Chelsea even more so because they were basically like quasi sanctioned for the last year or so. I don't understand how that could possibly
And
be
Abramovich
above
made,
board.
like, wasn't $1 billion in debt, or I can't remember the exact number, I
Right.
apologize, but, like, he made that disappear. How is that not, like, it feels like there have been lots of in plain sight, like, financial workarounds that have happened for some of these clubs that have been exploited.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying, oh, if you didn't punish Chelsea, you shouldn't punish City. I'm just saying, like, punish everybody.
The Premier League does seem to be more interested in the fraud here than the financial doping per se.
Then
I think
why
on
name the
some
fucking thing financial fair play if it's not about how fair it is?
because I think if you called it, "We want to know everyone's finances so that we can gain some semblance of control because we're all megalomaniacal freaks," that would be a less popular name, but like, I think that is ultimately what a lot of this is because what they're really in trouble for is not necessarily injecting money into the club, but it's committing fraud to the league while doing it and not like selling them sort of straight up of like this is where all the money's coming from and even doing like really sort of silly almost mafia level stuff of like it sounds like they were giving Mancini money in envelopes,
Well,
you
that's a
know.
great mafia name. That's a great name
It
for
is
Mancini.
the Mancini family.
Please have a seat at my table. And like they're like a
And
monsieur. Like,
now and now Italy hates us, so we've just gotten another country on
listen,
side.
no, Italy's like the one country, Italy, maybe Ireland, and the UK that you can kind of, take a shot at.
Why are
See,
you allowed to take a shot at Italy? I thought you were
so,
only allowed to take a shot at Italian Americans. That is in play for sure.
well, I'm from New Jersey, so I feel like I can do whatever I
So as a
want.
citizen of Italy
I'm from a lawless state
yeah,
of being.
mafia controlled.
Yeah, we invented the mafia. Italy found out about it and copied us.
I think that's probably, like, slightly truer than we have time to talk about on this podcast that isn't a mafia podcast.
Yeah, well, what? All right, just so the listeners know, Jeff has a hard out, so the podcast will end abruptly at one point, as you may have come to expect from how we always end the podcast. But and if that's the case, we should probably rattle on through some of these other things.
Shall we?
Yeah,
Oh,
go
wait,
for it,
sorry.
Jeff.
Do we wanna do any other attempts at what you think a fair punishment should be? Should they be oh, you know what would be interesting? Kind of like the way that they banned them from the Champions League, but then they unbanned them at the Court of Arbitration for Sport.
You think they should ban and unban them for something?
I think that what if they banned them from the Premier League for like say 2 or 3 years and then okay, so next year they go down with an all-star team and they win 6-0 every game in the championship, but then players' contracts are up and players want out and they're not making as much money and they're not getting the TV money. So then the next year they win 3-0. And then the year after that, they win 1-0. And now they've been a championship team for a few years. And who knows what has happened to the ownership group in the meantime, whether they'll be able to go back to the financial. That would be an interesting one for me. Just a ban from like you're not, no matter how many games you win, you're not welcome here for 3 years.
Jeff, I would love that. I would be very smug about that. However, if fairness is what we're going after, I think it's only fair every one of the representative parties that owns Manchester City. So the people on paper who own the club, and then the people who in actuality own the club have to line up, and Erling Haaland has to kick each of them in the dick, like really hard, like a full force kick.
You're
And
choosing a
once,
player that is their employee. I feel like there's a
yeah,
real conflict of interest there.
I think it's like this is the icon that represents all that is wrong with you, and he is going to dispatch justice
Mm.
into your balls.
What about I don't know, you wouldn't want Rooney? Who is the player that
Okay,
you would
here we go.
least like to kick you in the balls?
I mean, all of them are up there.
Yeah, yeah.
The list
They're
is
all
long.
it's an asymptotal relationship with maximum amount I don't wanna be kicked in the balls.
I pulled my groin playing Sunday night soccer this week, so I don't know if I can imagine anyone doing it without me
Uh,
collapsing. I just wanted to announce that to everyone listening.
Everyone have a moment of sympathy for Sky.
Schuyler Martial is hurt once again.
Aw.
Um,
What's your timeline like to return, or does Nostalgia FC like to sort of play those cards close to the chest?
we had a match that was scheduled during the Super Bowl, and I think the league realized no
Hmm.
one's gonna go to that except me. I would have totally gone.
Yeah.
So I have a week and a half or so to recover. I'll probably be okay. But I would love to know if you have any last words on Man City before we start talking about football instead.
I have one more important point, which I think the worst person to get kicked in the balls by is Vincent Company. I think he's the guy you'd want to avoid the most.
But
other
he
than
also was a city boy.
Yeah, not anymore though. So maybe he's
Once
got
a
an
city
axe to
boy,
grind.
he
City boy.
he won league titles because of all of this. He's one of the baddies. He's gonna defend
True.
them. He's gonna be like, I don't think that. I don't know how Vincent Company sounds, so he sounds like this. I don't think there's any problem with this, even though I'm Belgian, innit?
I was gonna say, yeah, I would have gone with Jean-Claude Van Damme rather than Statham for that, but okay, it's a choice.
I literally rolled out of bed, showered, and turned on my microphone. So I don't know that this is very good work for me.
You get Statham, Russia, and Italy.
Oh, it's a stadium-owned club.
I really wish that I had like some pressing news out of the Mexican League or something to discuss now, just so you could have El Statham.
Wait, what's this here? It says breaking news: Mexican League boring and awful. Wait, what is a vacation to vacated land? The topic's been up, and you never said anything about it.
No, I did. I was talking about the vacated titles. It wasn't a very good.
Oh, I thought it was a vacation.
explanatory.
I thought it was you went on another vacation, and I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, Vicken, how do you?
Got one coming up. Just a few days.
All right, what happened to Arsenal? Arse news.
It wasn't great. We had a lot of low quality shots, and we let in some chances, and it was tough to play away at Everton at Goodison Park. We were kind of like not doing well. It was probably our worst game of the year. Maybe even worse than the other loss that we have against you guys. So that was a tough one. And even like in terms, like I think we had more shots than them and more possession, which you'd sort of expect. But I think they were actually dominating even the XG stuff, and we really didn't have a lot of great chances at all. We had a lot of low quality chances, and that is a problem. And I'm worried that Dyche is just such a good coach. And
he's a good coach for that club as well.
Yeah, he's exactly what they need. And I'm worried whenever like you get beaten really soundly, like this happened to us against Palace last year, and it sort of provided a blueprint on how to stop us. We had been on like this hot streak, and it looked like we were probably going to get into the Champions League, and then we ended up not. And I think part of that is because other teams are like, oh, we should just do that. That's a good idea. And I'm a little bit worried that, the style of pressing that they had, it was very difficult to get around. And then also just sort of that bend but don't break of like, you can have another 22-yard shot. And granted, we also have guys that on a different day could hit those. Xhaka, Party, like we have guys that like to shoot from out there, Odegaard, but it's always kind of a crapshoot if that's your game plan. Is like we're going to shoot 15 times from outside the box and hope one of them goes in. Like that's tough.
It's so funny to think back to Burnley when Dyche was in charge of Burnley. He at different points had them. They weren't always like fighting relegation. Like sometimes he had them up in like 7th, 8th, like for a team that was not spending.
Sure.
And with Everton, that's never been the issue. If anything, they've spent so much and bought players that don't match and fit together. But like Dyche has never had, I would say, even players as good as those that are on Everton, like in their worst form. So if he can impose structure on the team, which it's early doors, right? Like there's no telling if this was a fluke, if maybe it was just like one of those weird matches that happens where like a good team doesn't play up to their potential and a bad team has a blinder, and
right.
That could be the case. But if he can kind of do for Everton what Eddie Howe has done for Newcastle, which is we're just going to be really difficult to play against, and we're going to see how many points we can get from that.
Yeah.
That might keep Everton up and in a way really turn that club's fortunes around. Like I could see him being there for a couple years at least.
Sure.
But like he'd only been in charge for a few days when that you played them, right? Like wasn't it only last week that he got the gig?
Yeah, which makes you think that there could be room to grow still. I think the main thing that they did is they just set up their press a bit differently. I'm not going to even try to explain it. There are videos on YouTube that will, but yeah, they just set it up in a smart way that made things difficult, and I think they were not doing that before. So I think there's a certain amount of X's and O's involved, and then some of the bigger plans that he might have about sort of changing the club mentality and personality. That stuff's still in play.
Is he
Soon.
bald? Is Sean Dyche bald?
Ish. Oh man,
Is he a bald fraud? Because that how that impacts how a club does.
Very
Sean
true.
Dyche.
Yeah, he's really bald. What am I thinking? Of course he's bald.
I don't know. I imagined him having like a red-headed stubble.
I was kind of imagining him having just like a little bit of like a poof where you weren't sure how far it went.
I'm gonna text message you in your phone a picture. Tell me, like, this is what I was remembering. It seems like some seasons he goes full bald. Some seasons he's got like my beard on his head.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I remember that too. The only thing that's wrong is what I thought.
but he could be really bald right now, and that could be probably why you lost.
Yeah, he could be defrauding us like Man City.
Oh, so that's another thing, Jeff. Not only do they need to examine the finances, they need to examine the hair implications of all of this. Like,
he's hiding in plain sight. He's a bald fraudster.
It's so weird that like this is like a meme that's like a global football meme, and I kind of really don't know why it started, but I'm happy to participate. Like the bald fraud. I don't know.
I thought it was Zidane that was the first one where like he's bald and maybe not a very good coach, but like he keeps winning the Champions League and doing stuff like that.
So it's not like a hair plugs bit, because Rooney got hair plugs and it was clear as fuck when he got hair plugs.
True.
He like it always happens. This song always. All right, I don't want to do any more, or else our podcast will get delisted.
Yes, it will.
Probably for the best.
But yeah, congratulations to Everton. Hopefully you haven't completely screwed up our season. I will say, and if there's one more Arsenal point to make, this would have been a prime Jesus game. And I think to a certain extent, Saka, although he's a different kind of player, but Jesus is a guy where you can have everyone just set up and then he just sort of does this and then he's run through three of them. And that would have been really nice to have. We don't really have that right now. We have Saka is more of he's a different style of dribbler. He's not a guy that wants to get in close and do a bunch of Brazilian stuff. He kind of wants to run by people.
For you listening at home, if you don't have the video feed, Jeff said Jesus will do a little something like this, and then he made a gesture that I couldn't even see in the camera window that I had into his apartment. So nobody knows what he's talking about.
Like a truffle. Actually, my hips are moving a lot, but I'm surprisingly stable.
Yeah. He's one of those stable cams where the camera stays exactly where it is in midair despite the cameraman moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nobody knows what Jeff meant by that.
For the record, I can hula perfectly below the surface here.
I'm curious if. All right, so when you lost against us, you could say 1, it was at Old Trafford, 2, a rival, 3, it could be a fluke, and then you've won all your other matches other than a few odd draws.
Yeah.
But losing to Everton, does this now in the back of your brain put the tiniest crack of this whole time that you've been in this title race, it's been well, Arsenal's pretty much won everything, and that's the only reason that you can believe that this is your year to win the league. But is this the first what was that? Is this your first
I mean, I think there was there's never been a point where I'm oh yeah, totally sure that we're winning the league. We're in first place again, and it's November.
But every week, your percentage of certainty goes up, even if it's by a fraction of a decimal. Every week
Sure.
you win. You're like, well, if we win a few more weeks, eventually, mathematically, it'll be impossible to lose a league.
Yeah. And there's that.
Does this make you afraid the next time you play West Ham that like, all right, so if we lost to Everton,
Sure. I mean, if they were the worst team in the league, according to this table last week, then yeah, like we can officially lose to anyone. And I think we have another trap game coming up here because before we get to play City, we have Brentford, who is one of the best teams on form right now.
and they've beaten you multiple times in recent years.
Yes, they have. And you know, they're also like they're just a tough team to play against in general. So like they're good. It's a home game for us, but they're also a London team. So who knows what kind of they'll probably have some pretty good support, I imagine.
Here's another question about punishments and bans. How is Ivan Toney still playing and scoring goals despite us knowing that he, I think, made several hundred bets on the Premier League? Like, shit, Pete Rose doesn't even get to play video game baseball anymore.
That's a really good question because, like, that came out right before. I haven't heard anything about that.
It's
Do
been
you think
months.
the Premier League just forgot because the World Cup?
The
'Cause that's what happened
Premier
to me.
League, the Premier League is one stoned teenager who just like,
shit.
oh, I forgot my homework. Forgot
yeah.
to ban Ivan Toney, man.
I've been starting Facebook beef with Man City, so this kind of got put on the back burner.
I'm just making some nachos, and I got a little distracted by arranging all the nachos. It just took so long. I forgot to ban Ivan Toney.
I would like to point out that accused sports gambler Ivan Toney's full name and initials are Ivan Benjamin Elijah Toney. I bet.
He was always honest about who he was.
It's right there in the name, guys. And I'm not making that up.
I wish there was someone at City whose name started with an I so I could spell out like Icheat. And it's like, wow, that's a lot of names. Must be like Brazilian or something where they've got a lot of names.
You have to start with I to make that declarative sentence. Otherwise, it's like Martin Odegaard. He's like, what is he going to say? Like, me always online.
Sunny,
M-E-O.
Philadelphia. How many minutes do we have before we lose you to
enough time to talk about Manchester United winning the game but losing to Casemiro.
All right, Manchester United, Crystal Palace. Of course, there's gonna be beef. There's gonna be some kerfuffles. We drew them on that last minute free kick insanity right before we lost to you guys, and we're playing them again already because the schedule is so bullshit because the Queen died. I'm just going to keep saying because the Queen died for everything bad that happens to me. So we play against Palace, and everyone, even the most casual of Manchester United fans, knew that Casemiro was one yellow card away from a one game. Wait, no. Yeah, that was the last one. Wait, am I confused? Dude, this is why I do the podcast when I wake up and you do it when you're like in your midday.
Oh, no, you're right, because that was the last one. So this wasn't a yellow card situation because that was a straight red that he got, wasn't it?
Right,
That's
yeah. So Casemiro came back from Palace, misses the Arsenal match with that one game ban, plays against Palace again, and then there's like, we're up by a couple of goals. Or no, we weren't. Yeah, we were up by a couple goals at this point. There's like a fracas. I don't know how you pronounce that word.
Hullabaloo.
There's a barn burner. There's a hootenanny happening.
There's a real hootenanny.
But where it's like something where like I think Anthony gets like hip checked over the barricade and the down by the corner flag, and so instantly it's like a bunch of grown men rubbing their tits together as a way to show how alpha they are.
Yes,
and
then key poses to establish dominance.
And then this is a really interesting thing that happens from a VAR perspective. So, basically, they just decide to like look for some shit, which I don't think is at all how VAR is meant to work. VAR is not like a fishing opportunity for punishment, right? Like it's meant to be like. Somebody thinks
that was so. The red card was not given until it went to VAR.
Correct. There was nobody, and also nobody in the. There's no screen in the stadium, so when there's a VAR check, people in the audience have no idea what the fuck it's even for. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, they show one angle of slow motion. It looks like Casemiro, lovable, angelic, cherubic Casemiro, who has never been sent off in his top 5 league professional history.
And was most definitely due for it, but go on.
I don't know if I'll agree with you on that. I think he's perfect. He's like my son.
Eh,
But it does in this like, I don't know, 20 frames that are spread out over a 30-second slow-mo playback. It looks like he's choking what's his face? The only Will Hughes.
Yeah.
Who I can't tell if he's just really blonde.
Were you gonna say the only blonde on the team?
No, I mean, but he's so blonde that like you look at the replay and like there's Will Hughes is almost like a highlighter in an essay.
Will Hughes on fire. His hair's on fire.
Will
It's
Hughes
white
looks
hot
like
and terrifying.
Will Hughes looks like Goku after going Super Saiyan level 2, but tiny and ineffectual. But yeah, it looks bad. And so Casemiro gets red carded, and it changes the entire dynamic of the match. Suddenly, Palace are fighting their way back in, and they score a goal. I can't remember who scored it, but it was Jeffrey Schlupp, who is the guy who pushed Anthony over the barrier, who I think he should have been sent off. Okay.
You would have expected at least a token yellow. Like, if we're going to go back in time and start looking for infractions, it was clearly kind of bad. Like,
yeah, Anthony.
Although he didn't go over the barrier. You're making that up. He just went very far out of bounds.
He was not, the ball had already been played, and it was like a very physical challenge when the ball had already been played. It should be penalized. But then there's a few things that happen. If you watch that whole scuffle, you see, I think it's like Andre Ayew or Jordan Ayew. I can't remember which Ayew plays for Palace. It's one of the Ayews. He just like decks Fred in the face, like a full blow is delivered. Nothing. It's like very selective who has been punished here. And then also you get other angles from fans who were there like 10 feet away.
Yeah.
And you see it at full time. And from the other angles, you see Casemiro's black gloves against Will Hughes' collar, holding his collar the way my hands are holding my shirt right now. I'm sorry if you're audio only. I'm sorry. Pay for the Twitch. It's free.
I'll paint a picture like Pat Summerall. Schuyler's grabbing his collar like a prisoner grabbing the bars, lifting it up.
Which definitely would normally get maybe a yellow, maybe a warning, but everyone was kind of doing the same thing. It was a scuffle, but he never grabbed his actual throat. He never put his hands around his throat at all. He's grabbing the shirt collar, and I think grabbing a shirt collar is not a red card. If it was, there'd be 5 red cards, 6 red cards every Premier League match. Every time there's a corner kick player is doing that. So like,
I do think because he was wearing gloves, and I think that it makes it hard to tell what exactly is going on. If he had not been such a cold boy, I think he might have gotten away, or I don't know, he wouldn't, maybe not gotten away with it is the right word, but maybe he wouldn't have been red carded.
But the angle I sent you, I remember you texted me. At first, you were like, bad boy, Casemiro, what you gonna do? Then you had said, I think my opinion is changing a little bit based on that angle, as it should, because the problem with VAR is that they chose one weird angle, and in slow-mo, it looks bad. In normal mo, it looks fine. And then even if he had been choking him, Will Hughes would have reacted. Every player that gets choked falls to the ground or embellishes it to make sure it gets seen. They're hugging like 2 seconds later. It was really like grabbing a shirt, moving him out of the way, almost as like an enforcer in hockey being like, get the fuck away from my guy.
I'm less sure of that than you. But I get what you're saying.
I am the fairest fucking United fan. I am always the first one to cast the stone at my own team when something is like, oh no, that's a red card. Like,
you are certainly, I feel like you are biased and self-loathing, which usually cancels out, but it's not a perfect system.
I'm the fairest in the land. Mirror, Jeff. But anyway, so he's out for 3 matches, and the club is not going to appeal. I think because Ten Hag is just the most pragmatic person that's run this club ever. So we're missing Casemiro for Leeds, and a third match that I can't remember. That's another team that hopefully we can beat without him. But like, fuck. Yeah. I don't know if you watched our match against Palace. I'm guessing not, because it's not.
How did Lokonga do? Any Lokonga moments? Sammy Lokonga on loan from Arsenal to
I
Palace?
don't even remember his name.
He
being
did come
said.
on, but not very much. Probably not a whole lot.
I think I was so beside myself about the Casemiro thing because I know we suck without him, and I was like, oh god, like every little thing that goes wrong could be the reason we don't get Champions League at this point.
I'm about to give you the last word so that I can go pick up
All
some
right.
children.
Club for sale. Apparently, a bid for Manchester United is imminent, and that is news.
Ooh, I didn't know that. This is very imminent news.
But a bid may be imminent, possibly in the next week, perhaps, perchance, maybe. That's a journalist saying, I can imagine a world where this thing happens, but I have no facts.
I've noticed that in soccer journalism, as long as you put a question mark in the headline, that's what those are called, then you're allowed to say whatever you want. Like,
is Manchester City a bunch of baby fuckers?
Yeah.
No, they're not. Like the article in media is like, no, they're not. But it begs the question, and we should be asking these questions.
Yeah. I've also heard someone said, like, for media literacy, if you ever see a question mark in the headline,
answer is no.
The answer is no.
Otherwise, if the answer is yes, they would just state it as fact.
Which makes me want to write a headline that says Manchester City staying in the league, you know?
Greta Thunberg, emotional vampire? And then like, nah.
She would have an emotional vampire would have such a reason to protect the planet because they're going to be here thousands of years. And like for us, whatever, I'm going to spray a can of aerosol hairspray from the 80s when it still had the good stuff in it right out the window right now.
Also, she's telling you that the planet's going to end if we don't do anything, and everyone's getting all sad about it. She's like, yes, precious emotions.
Man, double whammy for an emotional vampire. That explains Al Gore, too.
But I really like Greta Thunberg, what she's doing. She was just a random name. I have no agenda against her. Unlike the baby fuckers at Manchester City.
Question?
All right, do you got to run?
I have to run.
All right, bud. Thanks for jumping on, and let's hope they get to the bottom of this baby fuck gate at Manchester City's grounds. I hope that all these children are freed.
Me too?
Meet the soccer